Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. في ناس عزيزين خلاصين ومرحب بكم. I am so proud and delighted to welcome you all here this evening for a commemoration that started as a zikra, a remembrance of the month in which Al-Ustaz Mahmoud Muhammad Taha was executed. Interestingly, it is also, of course, the month which is recorded as the month of his birth, and this is the 100th anniversary of such. So we're very, very proud to host this at Ohio University, and extremely honored that so many people have come essentially from all over the world to honor this Dr. Ismail al-Mahdi and his devotion to technological perfection, which has made so many spectacular components of this, including, I think, we're going to be hooked up live to Sudan at some point, if not other tropical climes where it's a lot warmer than here. You can think thoughts with them. And also to Acacia Nikwe for all her extremely hard work in putting this all together. But let me also mention, very, very importantly, we're so very, very grateful for the participation this evening of the African Student Union at Ohio University. We're so proud that Mahmoud We're so very, very proud of Mahmoud Muhammad Taha as a hero of African freedom, of African consciousness, of African human rights, and he's increasingly being recognized as such. So that is so fantastic that our own African Student Union here at Ohio University is participating this evening and providing the wonderful food. And let's give a round of applause for the meal. Thank you so very much for that. We have a number of speakers this evening, including Asma Mahmoud Muhammad Taha, and I'll introduce her in a bit. As I said, though, I also want to acknowledge the presence of our own Shabab, the young people, the children of the movement, those born in the U.S. and or who came with their parents as immigrants from Sudan when they were very young, and who speak English better than I do, and Arabic better than I do as well at the same time. We're so proud of their participation in this event too. So welcome to Shabab Jamhuri. The first thing we'll do, we'll have a short video which will also show tomorrow to introduce Cornel West in the keynote for the Progressive Islam Conference tomorrow. And let's start with, is the film ready to show? I can't see anything with this light in front of me, but are we showing the film?
Yeah.
Where is it? Ismail, where is it? Yeah, Ismail, into when? I hear technological connection being made somewhere. I was told that we're doing...
He's coming.
He's coming, okay. الفيلم وين؟ We're not allowed to have technological interruptions. Okay.
The Blue Nile is the river of religion. It represents life to the farming and fishing families along its banks, and it gave life to the Awliya, the holy men and women who believed deeply in God and spread that belief up and down Sudan's Nile from the 15th century. The good Jazeera cracking clay soil that could hold any seeds and then nurture them quickly sustained a culture of faith that was pledged to monotheism. The one God, Allah, was the complete inspiration for a culture that was built on devotion and community and trust that God's prophet, Muhammad, provided the model for a perfect human life on earth. Many of the holy men and women are known to us today. Their resting places are marked by tombs, kubab, that are visited by the faithful to remember those whose paths followed, perhaps more in step with the prophets than our own weak ones. There are many of these saints buried in the Blue Nile village of Abu Haraz, just a few kilometers upstream from the birthplace of Mahmud Muhammad Taha. Ustaz Mahmud, Ustaz an honorific in the Sudanese Arabic pronunciation of the word for teacher, often visited Abu Haraz and knew the contribution that these holy men had made to the spiritual development of his country and her people. He wrote, "The Sufi leaders of the past made contributions to Islamic culture that are equaled by none in depth of thought and richness of quality. The Sufis tried in their writings to convey to us experiences that belong to the greatest heights and depths that the spirit of man has yet reached, for all I know." But Mahmud Muhammad Taha and his followers, men and women known collectively as the Republican Brotherhood, wanted to take their respect for Sufism, often thought of as Islam's mystical aspect, and update it to guide modern life and address its modern challenges. As the American scholar Cornel West wrote about Taha in his 2004 book, Democracy Matters, Taha conceives of Islam as a holistic way of life that promotes freedom, the overcoming of fear, in order to pursue a loving and wise life. We reconsider the life, words, and actions of Mahmud Muhammad Taha today to remember someone who understood deeply the Islamic faith's capacity to bring peace to the individual and to the world. That a message of peace and human freedom could develop out of Sudan, a country little known today except for intolerance and decades of war, has perhaps been the major reason that Taha's work has been overlooked. Taha and his followers tried to communicate this work from far outside circles of wealth and power, and forces have been at work in Sudan as well, bearing Ustaz Mahmud's teachings, harassing his followers, and leaving little room for open dialogue on questions of Islam's role in the modern world. But the intense exposure to all things Islamic in the last few years has also opened the door to differentiate that faith's many possibilities and offers us a chance to consider an Islamic scholar with a universal message. Mahmud Muhammad Taha began his life dedicated to freedom as a colonial subject of the Anglo-Egyptian condominium of Sudan. He was born 100 years ago in the town of Rufaa, a community completely steeped in Islam as was typical for the region. Sudan had been a British colony since the Battle of Omdurman in 1898. While Taha did not have the traditional religious education associated with many Islamic leaders of the time, his upbringing was intensely spiritual in the Sufi manner, combining work with religion. He went on to formal schooling and attained the highest level of education available to Sudan's colonial subjects at the time, graduating as an engineer from Gordon Memorial College in Khartoum. Ustaz Mahmud began his professional life in the 1930s, and from there joined with other college graduates and intellectuals in Sudan's quickly developing independence movement from the latter part of that decade. It was clear from the start of his involvement that decolonization or political independence for Taha were only first steps towards true human freedom. Colonialism was the denial of people's freedom, and his political party, the Republican Party, tried to lead the way toward establishing an independent Republic of Sudan. but its manifesto was Islam. As he said about his party in a later interview, the party's ideology was built on Islam. We opposed the tendencies of some of the other political parties towards an Islamic state because we were sure that they did not know what they were talking about. An Islamic state built on ignorance of the pure facts of Islam can be more detrimental to progress than a secular state of average ability. Religious fanaticism is inalienable from religious ignorance. The Republican Party was the most explicit party in outlining a program for the formation of an Islamic state, only we did not call it Islamic. We were aiming at universality, because universality is the order of the day. Only the universal contents of Islam were tapped. In 1946, in the midst of the independence movement, Ustaz Mahmoud and some of his fellow party members moved from theory to practice by demonstrating against the colonial government with handbills and booklets. He was arrested, spent 2 months in jail as Sudan's first political prisoner, and then was quickly back at these provocations with an incident that came to define the contours of Ustaz Mahmoud's complex philosophy of human spiritual development. His actions spoke to both gender issues in Islam and African social development in a manner not heard before in Sudan's march to independence, applying his original thinking in Sudan's streets. The British colonial authorities had outlawed the ancient and pre-Islamic practice in Sudan of female circumcision. A woman had been arrested by the authorities for circumcising a young girl. Taha led a demonstration at the jail where she was held, demanding her release, not because he supported the harmful practice, but because he felt strongly that the British could not legislate Sudanese cultural values. The only way to eliminate the practice of female circumcision, Taha felt, was to raise the social and educational status of Sudan's women, who could then speak up for themselves on such difficult issues. For these anti-government activities, Taha was sentenced to 2 years in a colonial jail. When he left prison, rather than return to the pre-independence political campaign, he retreated to his hometown of Rufaa, where he immersed himself in the deep spiritual quest which was common to Sufi practice. He ate sparely, spoke with few, and grew his beard and hair long. Mahmoud Taha emerged after 2 years of this khalwa or retreat with a new understanding or interpretation of God's words, which would bring humankind to the modern standard that was Islam's potential. He later said about the experience, "My concept was so new I became a stranger among my own people." Taha's convictions rested on the well-known history of the Quran's revelation, that the Prophet Muhammad had received some of the verses of the Quran while starting his community of Muslims in early Mecca, and some when he journeyed with them to Medina. The latter verses generally spoke to a community in turmoil, searching for direction as the Islamic community came under attack. The former verses, those revealed in Mecca, generally had a tone of peace and intended to guide the Prophet's personal practice and that of all of mankind into the future. Taha began to work on a book which he called The Second Message of Islam, which explained how Muslims could base lives of peace, of gender and social equality, and enlightened progress by following the prescriptions of Quran's texts revealed to the Prophet in Mecca. This focus on the Meccan text of the Quran was viewed by some conservative Muslims as heretical, in that while it was understood that the Medinan texts were directing life in 7th century Arabia, to leave out part of the Quran, complained the conservatives, was completely unacceptable. But Ustaz Mahmoud was adamant in his declaration that focusing on the Meccan texts of the Quran was the only way to maintain a modern Muslim world in the image of the behavior of the Prophet Muhammad. And he began to lecture on this topic, write about it, and slowly gather a strong group of followers who chose to accept his principles of Muslim life, which were particularly welcoming to women. It was perhaps the emphasis on a strong role for modern women in the Muslim community and in providing them with education, which brought Taha and his organization, now known as the Republican Brotherhood after his political party, the most controversy. Through the 1960s and 70s, they were physically and politically harassed in the streets as they attempted to sell books about Ustaz Mahmoud's thinking, or denounced from the nation's mosques. In the 1980s, the regime of then Sudan President Jafar Numeri imposed the harsh so-called Sharia laws throughout Sudan, which were ostensibly based on parts of Quranic teachings. Ustaz Mahmoud and his followers began to write and speak out in public against the imposition of these laws in the country, which was not but 60 to 70% Muslim. 70 of the brothers and sisters, including Ustaz Mahmoud himself, were arrested for these acts against the government, and after a brief trial in early 1985, Mahmoud Muhammad Taha was declared an apostate, in Islam one who has abandoned his religion, and executed for this capital offense on 18th of January 1985 at the age of 76, an act in itself against the principles of Islamic law. The 17-year regime of Jafar Numeri was overthrown quickly by popular revolt shortly after the execution, and Ustaz Mahmoud's daughter, Asma, took the case of her father's declaration of apostasy to the Sudan Supreme Court. The verdict was overturned posthumously, and his property and good name were returned to the family. The Republican brothers and sisters continued to spread Ustaz Mahmoud's message of peace, tolerance, and spiritual development around the world, and try to keep his inspiring words alive in their hearts. He is remembered today as an important early nationalist leader in Sudan who brought Africa's spirituality into the discourse on human freedom. We conclude this brief introduction to the life of Mahmoud Muhammad Taha with his final words spoken in public at his 1985 apostasy trial in Omdurman.
أعلنت رأيي في قوانين سبتمبر سنة 83. نعم، أعلنت رأيي مرارا في قوانين سبتمبر. أنا أعلنت رأيي مرارا في قوانين سبتمبر 83 من أنها مخالفة للشريعة وللإسلام أكثر من ذلك، فإنها شوهت الشريعة وشوهت الإسلام ونفرت عنه. يضاف إلى ذلك أنها وضعت واستغلت لإرهاب الشعب وسوقه إلى الاستكانة عن طريق إذلاله. ثم إنها هددت وحدة البلاد. هذا من حيث التنظير. وأما من حيث التطبيق فإن القضاة الذين يتولون المحاكمة تحتها نعم غير مؤهلين فنيا وضعفوا أخلاقيا عن أن يمتنعوا عن أن يضعوا أنفسهم تحت سيطرة السلطة التنفيذية تستعملهم لإضاعة الحقوق لإضاعة الحقوق وإذلال الشعب وتشويه الإسلام وإهانة الفكر والمفكرين وإذلال المعارضين السياسيين. ومن أجل ذلك فإني غير مستعد للتعاون مع أي محكمة تنكرت لحرمة القضاء المستقل ورضيت أن تكون أداة من أدوات التعذيب للشعب، أداة من أدوات إذلال الشعب وإهانة الفكر الحر والتنكيل بالمعارضين السياسيين
Let me particularly thank Omar Khawari for his spectacular work on this video, and Ismail Al-Mahdi as well. And Omar is really the digital archivist of this movement par excellence, and he is preserving these memories for us in the most remarkable way. So we're very grateful for that. And of course, we spared no expense on hiring a narrator. Let's see. I'd like to now introduce Asma Mahmoud Muhammad Taha, who is really another hero, a Sudanese hero, a woman, my teacher, someone who I've learned so much from, and who I'm so very grateful could come to be with us this evening for this remembrance of her father. Asma speaks out and speaks out and speaks out, and has been doing this for most of her life and challenging people and the way they think. We're very, very honored to welcome Asma Mahmoud Muhammad Taha.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Good evening everybody. First, for those who may miss some of what I'm going to talk about because of my heavy accent, I have to apologize for that. And I call, actually as a group, we call our heavy accent wavy. And this has a story. We have here Amin, Hanan, and Abu Bakr's son. Once his mother was talking to his teacher and he was listening to her. Then when she finished talking to the teacher, he said to his mom, Mom, I don't want to offend you or anything, but I think your English is wavy. And we started to use this word. You can feel free to use it whenever you want. First, I would like actually to thank Ohio University, but I feel speechless. I can't find any words to describe my exact feeling and to thank them for what they did in this event. And the reason why I didn't find the exact word and I'm speechless, because if you can imagine a girl whose father, 76 years old father, was executed in public in the largest prison in Sudan, and all his opposition groups were gathered at that time to attend this sad incident, while his followers were persecuted at that moment and detained everywhere in the country. And the people who opposes my father's ideas were chanting while he was executed, Allahu Akbar, thinking this is what God is willing. And after that, his body was taken by helicopter to a place not known to either his direct family or any of the followers. Up to this moment, we don't know where this body was. His house was confiscated. His books, valuable books, like 34 big books, embodied all his theory and thoughts, were burned and thrown in the Nile, while his opposers were gathered chanting Allahu Akbar. And all the followers at that time were detained. Then, for these reasons and other reasons, many of the followers felt that they have no place to stay in Sudan. So they fled the country to other parts in the free world seeking asylum. This is what I did with my family, and many of the people here from the group did the same thing. Then, 24 years later, my father was celebrated in a reputable university in the biggest country in the world. That is why I can't say anywhere. 24 years later, everything was changed. And now we are celebrating 100 years for the birth of my father and 24 years for his execution. But I have to say something. I think this is a very great gesture from the university, and I think that I'm asking or requesting the Ohio University to carry on and extend what they did right now to be like something to be carried and held in the future, to show progressive Islam and to open its ways for the people to know what Islam is exactly. There is other side of Islam not known to the Western world or to the world at large. So thank you, the International Studies Program, in particular Professor Steve Howard, and all who have input in this great gesture. I would like also to share this moment with Martin Luther King, who followed the same path and who spread the same and who advocated for the same ideas my father did. The advocacy for peaceful, for freedom and human rights and social justice. So I want to share this moment with him also. As well, I want to share this moment with President-elect Obama to congratulate him and ourselves for this big achievement. And we are looking that and hoping something of what my father and Master Martin Luther King will be implemented and will be carried on in the United States as well as internationally. As for the topic, I am supposed to talk about glimpses of the thought and life of Ustaz Mahmoud Muhammad Taha. And this, for me, is a very big issue, but I have to touch some points at the moment. My father, as many of the people who lived with him at that moment, their testimony, he was unique. My aunt Kaltoum, my father's sister, she said that his childhood was completely different from other people at like his age. She told us some stories. One of these stories, she said, once he did something wrong, and she used to prefer him from her other siblings. And she said he did something wrong, and because his father was so strict, she was afraid that he will be punished for what he did. When his father came, she told him that his other brother Mukhtar did that. And when he came, she told him that she told her father, his father, that Mukhtar did that thing. And to her surprise, as she said in the story, he said to her, why you don't have to lie. He's just going to punish me. It's just a slash. Why did you have to lie? For me, this is something, it may look like something very trivial or not, it doesn't deserve to stop at. But for me, I think this is the basis of the big theories that came later, that to do what you want to do and to bear the responsibility. This small event has its implications in the future, and it showed me where and what is it meant at that time. It is something coming in the future in the theory of Ustaz Mahmoud about freedom of action and freedom of thought. Another also event or something happened in his early childhood. Once he was playing with his brother, and his brother was throwing stones in the street. And he told him not to throw stones because stones, they don't have eyes, meaning it may hurt someone. And also from this event, I took something very major in the whole theory. My father wrote later on that don't hurt others, or your freedom stops when other people's freedom starts. So from these things and other things used to my uncle, my aunt used to tell us about, I took the thing that in his childhood is completely different. It was thoughtful, and so was his youth. His youth, of course, he was very active in the political movement. He showed his bravery. He was the first prisoner in the Sudan national movement. He stood against the colonization, and he stood against the national government when he thought that what the government is doing was wrong. And this showed something very important to me, how to be brave and how to stand against wrongdoings. The most important thing that I stood and always watch, and I think it has its own influence in my life, is that the consistency of my father's actions with his thoughts. This is something strikes me the most. All he said or think about is followed by the actions that is similar to what he thought. Very consistent throughout his life. 1909 to 1985, I didn't see any kind of discrepancy between what he said and what he did. I can give some examples because for me, I think many writers can write very good ideas, very ideal ideas, but you can ask, or if you see them closely, you will find that there is difference between what they say and what they behave or do. For example, he speak about, he asked the governments of Sudan that the people of Sudan should be equal in poverty until they become equal in wealth. And that is his life. He lives with the poor people. He opened his doors and his house to the people who are disadvantaged. And throughout his life, although he was capable and was the first, he graduated from a very known and reputable college at that time as an engineer, still he lived all his life in a mud house, in a poor neighborhood. He eat what the poor people eat. The house is composed of like 3 rooms. The rooms are used for sleeping, for dining, for everything. He doesn't have any fans, no refrigerator at the house. He doesn't have air conditions, and he said because the environment is inside us. We don't. If we have you can make your own environment. You don't need to have conditions or heaters or that kind of luxuries as he think and he did for his life. His life is that simple. And an example, one of his friends was a merchant and a wealthy man. Once he gave him some fruits. He gave him grapes, asking him to taste this. And he said that these grapes are very delicious, just taste them. Rustas told him they will become delicious when every Sudanese can afford to buy and eat them. This is a very good example of showing the consistency between what he's advocating for and what he is living. For example, he stood for the equal rights of women, and he did this. The first step he did is like us, the female members of the family should be the ones who go outside in the streets, who speak about their life, about their rights, and he empowered the woman of the family and the woman in the group first to do that. We know so many writers, like Muslim writers, advanced writers who spoke about women's rights, but we didn't see that kind of empowerment my father did with the women in the groups. For example, the marriage documents, the marriage certificate for each one of them, we have the equal right in divorce. We have an article that no man should, like my husband cannot take another wife with me. This is something found in the marriage certificate for each one of the girls here or the women here married in this group. And I think also this is a major step. If you look to the Muslim societies in general, the Sudanese society also as a conservative community, this is something, a step forward, and it was opposed by the community. And one of the most things opposed in my father's ideas is his advocacy to women's rights. And this also shows how consistent my father was about this issue. There are a lot of things like speaking about peace. My father is advocating for peace. And he wrote, since the 60s, he wrote about we have to reconcile with Israel. We have to negotiate our problems with them and to stop war. In Sudan also, he spoke about going to the negotiation table instead of the killing which was going on at that time between Southern Sudan and Northern Sudan. And he stick to this idea of peace. And all his life also was peaceful. There are a lot of details which shows that kind of peaceful life. He says that if you become peaceful, if you acquire peace within yourself, you will not be hurt. For example, one day he was going with his followers in the graveyards, and there was a big snake coming. And snakes in Sudan, they are very dangerous. And one of the followers, he wanted to kill the snake, and my father said, no, don't kill him. And the snake passed through. Also, there was a scorpion at Hazel, which came one day from under his bookshelf, and also scorpions in Sudan are very dangerous. And he told us not to kill it. While the scorpion was raising its tail like this, it just put it down and went down the bookshelf. This is how he said, if you live in peace with animals, with insects and these kind of things, you will not be hurt. And that is why the Sufi live in jungles and forests throughout their life. And this showed also how peaceful he was. Once he has an ant in his sleeve, and he leaned against the wall so that the ant can find its way and go up. A man like this will be executed in the way the government said, that he was an apostate and he was against religion. And I don't see any kind of religion that, or any kind of behaviors like this which will be considered against religion. These are some glimpses of my father's life. The life was full of thoughts. The life was full of wisdom, and whenever you go there, whenever you meet with him, you will find something useful that you can go out and practice throughout your life. This is my father's life, and he wrote so many pamphlets, so many books, which you can find these ideas inside it, and this is his life. I am concerned with what will happen next. Now, this life has been taken by a ruthless regime, and it has been taken for political reasons. Actually, it has nothing to do with religion. Although they are trying to tell the world that he was an apostate and the Muslim world in general, but the true stuff, the truth behind that, it was a pamphlet written by my father, criticizing the government for implementing Islamic Sharia law in a society which was not ready for that, and even the laws enacted, they were against Sharia, as the word you have seen in the court. What I'm going to do after this, I think we have to carry on this legacy forward. And we don't want anyone in the Muslim world to face, in the name of Islam and apostasy, what had done to my father. That was the end of it. All of us has responsibility to stop this thing, and to carry and to advocate for the freedom of speech and the freedom of all people to believe whatever they want to believe, and to defend it without any kind of persecution. I'm going back to Sudan now. I am thinking of making a center in the name of my father. The house which was confiscated now, it returned to us, and I'm planning to do that. I'm planning also to file a suit, a constitutional suit, to declare that all the articles in the Sudanese criminal law that deal with apostasy are unconstitutional. And we are going to do a lot of things, distributing these books and talking about what my father says, so that the picture will be clear, and so that nothing will happen in the future to any Muslim or any person to be taken in the name of the religion as against religion and to be executed. I think Ohio University now, by what they did in this program, they did very fruitful, very appreciated movement towards what we are planning. And we hope that many universities in the United States to do the same. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Asma Mahmoud. The Republican movement was, in effect, stitched together by music, by spiritual music, by the words of contemporary poets, members of the organization, as well as some classic Sufi poets who were put to contemporary music, and members of the organization could be heard singing these songs throughout the day, and they were used during Republican meetings, Republican events. Sometimes an event would just be called to listen to this beautiful music. And we're so delighted today to have the Sheikh al-Munshideen, the dean, in effect, of the Republican singers, Mr. Abdul Karim Ali Musa, popularly known as Koroma, to begin to introduce us to some of this beautiful Republican singing. Koroma.
الله بك نفيس يوسف. يتقدموا هنا الأخوان دكتور الجيدي، عمر هوال، زيها you care about your child? الله 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 ترنموا ترنموا ونعموا ذواتنا وزينوا أسمانا وطيبوا صفاتنا. وجملوا أفعالنا جددوا صلاتنا. جملوا أفعالنا وجددوا صلاتنا. ترنموا ترنموا بالحب في حياتنا. هجرت سوح بلدتي عبرت للمدينة ومكتي تلفعت بغيمة حزينة. الشوق في أحشائها والنار في السفينة. ترنموا ترنموا نرد لسكينة. هجرت سوح بلدتي عبرت للمدينة ومكتي تلفعت بغيمة حزينة. الشوق في أحشائها والنار في سفينتي. ترنموا ترنموا نرد للسكينة. من رام درب العودة الحب درب العودة. من رام درب العودة الحب درب العودة. الله رب الرحمة خلاصة المحبة. الله رب الرحمة خلاصة المحبة. وفضله يعيدنا لجنة الطفولة. فضله يعيدنا لجنة الطفولة. ترنموا ترنموا بالبراءة. ترنموا ترنموا بالصدق بالبراءة. ترنموا ترنموا بالصدق بالبراءة. ترنموا ترنموا بالصدق بالبراءة.
الله
remembering how often this music was sung in a very serious mood in the presence of Ustaz Mahmoud, but then people would go home and maybe and jazz it up a little bit and up in an upbeat, up-tempo kind of mode too. So there's a very flexible mode of music, which we all greatly love. The members of the Republican Brotherhood are very, very proud of Dr. Abdullah Naim and the role he plays really in the world today as a leading spokesperson for progressive issues in human rights around the world. And I'm personally grateful that he's come to join us for this program this weekend. And he is a professor of law at Emory University in Atlanta. And my dear brother, please, Dr. Abdullah Naim.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Language is a barrier to communication most of the time. But our frustration with it is when, in a light like tonight, when I was listening to the chanting that was done by Karoma and his group, I was lamenting the fact that most of us in this room couldn't follow what was being sung. And I wish we had sort of maybe having some sort of translation running in the background. You know, when you go to opera, and you can't follow what is being sung, but you know, have that line, that strip that tells you at least a sense of what you're missing. The first chant that Roma and his group started with tonight is about Allahu Rabbul Rahmati Khulasatul Mahabbati. That's one verse in that poem by Assam al-Bushi, one of our group. And it reminds one of Ibn Arabi when he says, الدين بدين الحب أين توجهت ركائبه فالحب ديني وإيماني. The two Muslim poets, 7 centuries apart, Ibn Arabi in the 11th century and Assam al-Bushi in the late 20th century, singing that love is religion and love is God. That God is love, rather. Assam's expression is that God is the essence of love. And also in Arabic speaks of a similar idea. So the point is that for truly pious and profound human beings, like my teacher, Mr. Mahmoud Muhammad Taha, it is not singing about love, it is about being love. And everything about him, I was a student of Ustad Mahmoud for almost 20 years in his own lifetime at the time, and now this was 40 years ago when I first met him and got totally taken by his, not only his ideas, which resonated completely with what I was thinking as a young student at Khartoum Faculty of Law, but with that ability to be what he said, and to actually to transform even air around us. You know, like you would be standing, listening to him, and you would feel that you are being transformed by the presence. And it is not, language, as I say, is a barrier to communication. So, reduced to language, I talk about charisma. But knowing that it is not that, it is something that is in the total conviction and the total living of what he said. He was what he said. When he spoke of love, he was love. But of course, I'm not here to praise my teacher, but I'm here to try to communicate an idea about how marvelous it is that this is possible for every single one of us in this room. this is possible for every single human being everywhere. That the genius of Ustaz Mahmoud Muhammad Taha is multiple or multi-layered. There is, as I was saying, about the genius of his conviction and his life by that conviction. The speech that we heard, again, that was translated, fortunately, was remarks that he made totally off the cuff, unprepared in court when he was facing a death penalty charge. And he was telling the judge to his face, "You are not competent to try me for my ideas." And you saw the composure, you saw the calm, the civility. And my sister Asma, we were listening, and when Ustaz finished, and he said, "Thank you," and sat down. I don't know if you noticed that. That he was telling his judge and executioner, "You are not competent to try me for my ideas," knowing that that man is going to sentence him to death. And when he concluded, he said, "Thank you," and sat down. And his sitting down was to communicate his refusal to cooperate with the court. He was telling the court, "You are not a court worthy of my addressing you to rebut the charges, because they are totally bogus charges." That is one level dimension of his genius. His ability to be true and to be totally what he said and what he believed. But I was referring to in my other remark to his ability to give us a way of transforming ourselves. That each one of us can start every single day, every single minute of every day. And that we can keep doing no matter how wrong you get it. It is never over. It is never failed. That is the point. It is about how our ability to transform ourselves, which is the only way we can be transformed. One point is that nobody can change us except ourselves. But we can change ourselves every day, all the time. Whatever it is that is holding us back as human beings, whatever it is that is holding us back as husbands, as wives, as children, as parents, whatever is holding us back as citizens, whatever is holding us back as football fans, whatever it is. I know this is not a big football school, but whatever it is, we can change. You know, like Obama said it, yes we can?
Yes, we can.
Yes we can.
Yes,
Yes we can. And Ustaz Mahmoud said it and did it. And showed us that all of us can. In fact, with all due respect, it's much more profound than what Obama is talking about. It is not that level only of changing policies and reversing reckless policies and actions. It is much more than profound than that. It is about being human. And being human is infinite. It is eternal. It never ends. It is constant, eternal transformation. That is the magnitude of what Ustaz Mahmoud was talking about when he talks about religion and love and God. It is about how the human is the divine in progress. How the human is a project of the divine. That our humanity will never end except and until it eventually leads us into divinity of the divine. And that is an infinite pursuit. And that constant transformative process starts, for me, it started one evening when I had nothing better to do, so I went to a lecture because there was no movie showing in town. And this was in 1968 in Adbara, a town in northern Sudan. And I listened to Ustaz Mahmoud, a single lecture, and that transformed my life forever. I could never walk away. That is the power of ideas, that is the power of presence, But the process of transformation that started for me that evening when I was 20 years or 20 years old continues now that I am 63 years old. Day by day, and it is never going to be over. The point I wanted to conclude with and leave you to think about is that this is not about Islam. This is not about religion as we know it. This is about being human. And that you can take it regardless of your view of religion or of Islam. The theme of this conference, the whole idea of activities that Dr. Howard and his colleagues started, 100 Years of Progressive Islam, is a very powerful idea and a very worthy idea. But actually, progressive Islam is not about Islam at all. It is not about religion at all. It is about the human and the ability of the human to transform herself into infinity, into divinity. That was the message of Ustad Mahmoud Ahmad Taher. Thank you very much.
As I introduce the next person to come up here, I'd also like to thank all of the members of the organization that he represents. They did a fantastic job tonight, as they always do, preparing the food, and they're a really important part of promoting Africa on campus. The African Student Union puts together events throughout the year so that we can promote Africa on campus in events like this one, so thank you. Mr. Fletcher Zawoya is a great person to be leading the organization. He's been in Athens now for 4 years. He is a PhD student in the School of Communication Studies, and he is also a proud Pan-African, hailing from Malawi, wearing clothing from Northern Nigeria, and presenting at a program on Sudan. So I'd like to welcome Fletcher Zawoya.
Thank you, Acacia, for the kind introduction. You know, the best thing about being a speaker towards the end of the program is that you just get to summarize what others have been saying, and you get to speak the shortest. I really cannot say enough how great it is for I personally, and the ASU in general, to be part of this historic event tonight. We have a saying where I come from that if a child washes his hands, he can sit down and dine with the elders. And I think that is what I personally and ASU are doing tonight. Just as ASU saw it fit to posthumously recognize Mahmoud Muhammad Taher as our African hero in 2001 for his work in Africa, today ASU is proud to be part of this celebration of his life and his work in Africa. And let me just take this opportunity also to inform you that in 2 weeks' time, we are going to be honoring our very own Dr. Steve Howard as our African hero. I would like to thank the organizers of this function for inviting us. ASU members, as you already have heard, they have been very helpful in preparing the food that we just had, and I'm sure it was delicious, that you liked it. And I would like to personally commend them and all those who worked hard for this function to be such a success. ASU is also putting up a poster presentation in the lobby on Africa. And this is part of a series that is organized to portray the positive side of Africa that you don't quite often hear in the media. What we hear in the media are just reports of fighting, hunger, corruption, and instability, as if those things do not happen here or anywhere else in the world. Recently, Ghana held very peaceful presidential elections, but we don't quite get to hear those kind of stories in the media. So ASU is trying to draw the world's attention to the good things that are taking place on the continent. And we are calling this initiative the Africa You Should Know. So please take time to visit our table and talk to our members so that you can get more information and hear the good stories that come from the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here tonight to honor and celebrate the life of Mahmoud Muhammad Taha, who was a great father, teacher, and leader of the people, not only in Sudan, but in the whole world as well. His teachings, courage, and sacrifice will continue to guide the conscience of every committed leader in the world, not only in the religious circle, but in politics as well. He showed leadership on matters of faith, politics, and human rights. He believed in the unity of our peoples. We have all seen the documentary about his life. Books have been written on his religious and political contributions in Sudan, and we have heard how he stood alone, even in the face of death, for what he believed in. History books are full of his contributions to Islam and to politics in Africa and in the whole world in the past 100 years. I will not attempt to repeat what has been said here. What I'm going to focus on tonight is what I think is the greatest lesson that the present generation and future generations should learn from the life of Muhammad Taha. And that lesson is the need for courage to change the things that we think should be changed for the better, even if that means risking our very life. Courage has been described as grace under pressure, and that was what was demonstrated by Muhammad Taha even on the day that he died in the hands of the Sudanese government. Documented reports indicate that as he died, he was quite at peace with himself and even his accusers. When we study the lives of people such as Muhammad Taha, that is when we get to understand the complexity of courage. That is when we get to appreciate its power. But why should we bother to study history and learn about people such as Muhammad Taha? I personally believe that time has come in Africa and in the whole world for us to begin to appreciate true leadership. As Caroline Kennedy said of JFK, we need to recognize leadership. We need to respect it, and we need to require it of our leaders. Mahmoud Muhammad Taha showed leadership that must be recognized and emulated by one and all. He gave his life for the cause that he believed in. He gave his life for human freedom, unity, and general well-being of his people. Today, there are zillions of local and global challenges, from the killing in Darfur, oppression in Zimbabwe, instability in the Congo, and strife in the Middle East that demand genuine and courageous leadership to say that enough is enough. We must move on as free, united, and progressive people. But maybe those examples are beyond some of the people present here. But are we not leaders in our own right, in our classrooms and schools, in our homes and in our local towns? How so easy it is to side with the masses, to choose the easy way out, to hide when the going gets tough, and to support the status quo, even when that goes against our own conscience. We can pull a leaf from the book of our great teacher and leader, Muhammad Taha, and be the change that we want to be in the world. It is time we turned all the grand theories we have been accumulating as intellectuals into practice to change our world for the better. Muhammad Taha was a practical man. True and courageous leadership does not come by accident. We must make a choice to stand up for our ideas, the rights of our people, and the betterment of all. We cannot run away from this calling, and we cannot postpone it. So allow me tonight to appeal to my youthful friends, one and all, to choose to make a difference in our societies. Someone said we are products of our choices. So let us choose to be the change that we want in the world. Jail time and threats of death did not stop Muhammad Taha from preaching what he believed to be true. This world needs a lot of Muhammad Tahas if peace and prosperity is going to prevail. One Andrew Jackson said, "One man with courage makes a majority." It is my hope that today an army of young men and women in Sudan and in the whole world is going to rise and be willing to give up their lives for the truth, for human freedom and unity of the human race. Otherwise, Mahmoud Muhammad Taha died in vain. I thank you for your attention.
Sikomo Kwambiri Achmwene, and thank you for your outstanding leadership of our African Student Union. The women of the Republican movement were probably the most courageous elements of the movement, and one of the most, the strongest elements of that courage was the women who would go out and perform in public the singing of these Republican hymns. One of our outstanding munshida, singer of these spiritual hymns, is Mahasan Muhammad Khair, who is with us this evening from Iowa, and I'm pleased to introduce her. I should point out that in the traditions of the singing among the Republicans, certainly there were well-known people who were specialists in leading this type of music, like Bahasan, like Koroma, but everyone was expected one way or another and wanted to participate in the chorus, although of course we have a chorus here of many people who are also munshideen or singers themselves. We're grateful for all their participation. And I'm very grateful that Dr. Abdullah Ernest Johnson has come to us from far Seattle for tonight's program. Abdullah Ernest was the person who introduced me to this amazing movement. I'll always be grateful to him for that. And he lived with the Republicans and worked with them for many years in the 70s and 80s. So, Abdullah.
Yeah, thank you, Steve, for that lovely introduction, and I'd like to thank the committee for having me here today, especially for placing me after Asma and Dr. Abdullah Naeem spoke. Makes my job a lot easier. I don't know what there is for me to say that they haven't said. My own personal story might be something I could share with you. I started this conversation earlier with some of the younger people, and I still have them in mind, so One of the things that Asma talked about was the notion of sincerity and Ustaz Mahmoud. How he taught that we should think what we want, say what we think, do what we say, with one provision that it doesn't harm other people. And that's how he lived. And the sincerity by which he lived is, I think, manifest in his followers. So I'd like to just ask if all of the Mahmouds in the room would stand up. How many of you are? Everybody named Mahmoud after Ustaz Mahmoud, please stand up in the room. Some of them are gone? Okay. Okay, anybody stand, then help me here. Stand up if somebody in your family is named after Ustaz Mahmoud, named Mahmoud, then stand up. That'll make the point a little better. Okay? Thank you for the help. All right, and I'll talk to them later for not being here for my talk. I would like the Amnas, this is Ustaz's wife's name, to stand up, or anybody who has a child named Amna after Ustaz Mahmoud, please stand up. Okay, thank you. And Ustaz's oldest daughter is Asma, and his other daughter is Sumaya. We could do the same thing with them. My only child is named Sumaya. So there's a reason for that, right? And it has to do with what Dr. Abdullahi was talking about, is that you're sold on the man before his ideas. You're sold on the man. And so when I arrived in Sudan, I had actually had a conversation with a colleague of mine at the University of Hawaii. He was actually a fellow student. I asked him, when I became a Muslim, he actually took me under his wing and taught me how to pray, how to fast. And then he told me he was going to Sudan, and would I like to come with him? And I said, sure. And the reason I spoke so quickly is because I saw something in his behavior and in the behavior of the other Sudanese at the University of Hawaii that I wanted to investigate. And what I saw in them was character. What I saw in them was conduct that I was looking for in other humans. So before we left for Sudan, I asked Salman another question, and I said, is there a teacher there that has a modern understanding of Islam? And the reason I asked that question was, I was born a Christian, and I started my own personal journey in Christianity, which led me to study Eastern religions. And I did yoga and Tai Chi, and I'm still right now practicing Qigong. And in that personal search, in my personal journey, there were certain realizations that I had come to. And I had been exposed to traditional Islam, and I had respect for it. I knew that it had a tremendous impact on the African American experience. I was very much moved also by Malcolm X. He was a person I looked up to for standing up to the worst side of America, and also to Muhammad Ali, who also took a very courageous stand, as most of you are aware, in giving up his heavyweight title when he was at the top of his game, on a moral principle that he wouldn't go fight in Vietnam because he felt the war was immoral and he had no reason to go. That position by an athlete was very rare. It was something no one had seen in America that I could think of. So I was impressed by these men, and both of them identified themselves as Muslims. And I had started to read a little bit about African American history and seen the connection between Islam and West Africa and so forth. So I'm impressed with the Sudanese, and I asked that question, and Salman said, yes, there's one man, and his name is, and he told me, Ustaz Mahmoud, and he said that I've read all his books. I think he might have been exaggerating, because there's a lot of them, but he said he had read all his books, and that he believed every word that he said. That's what he told me. I said, oh wow, I said, okay. Can we meet him when we get there? And he said yes. And 3 weeks after I had arrived in Sudan, I was at Ustaz's front door. And when I approached the front door, there was a calm around his students. And as I got introduced into his house, and as Asma explained, he only had 3 rooms in his house, dirt floor, no this, no that. I mean, he lived simply according to his philosophy. And so I'm sitting in his greeting room, and it starts to fill up. I'm talking about, you've got like some type of fire hazard going on in this house. There's no room for anybody. And I'm watching these grown men, many of them senior to me, I was 24 at the time, come into the room and sit down on the floor like this. I'm going, what are they waiting for, you know? And they kept filling up the floor, and then the women came in and they sat, and there was a type of, there was a type of politeness and a type of expectation just in these students that caught my attention. And then Ustaz entered, and it was like, oh, I see. I see what that was all about. I mean, he came into the room and just, he picked up everybody's spirit, and he just was so calm and so into his own skin. I mean, he was just so calm with himself and so at peace with himself. It exuded. And so I was taken with the man when I first met him. Before I read anything, I said, I'll study under him for a while. And my intention originally was just to find out if Islam in Sudan had anything to do with this politeness I saw in the Sudanese in Hawaii. And many of you already know that what's going on in Sudan now is not reflective of Sudanese culture and Sudanese people. It has to do with that, I would say, almost Islamic colonialism that's taking over many parts of the world, and there's a superimposed system there in the north. And you're probably aware of that. But anyway, I had a chance to talk with him, and he asked me some questions about what would cause a person who was a Christian to come to Sudan looking for truth. And I was startled by the question, and I stopped and I thought about it, and I gave him my answer. I really just hadn't got all the answers I was looking for. And so he gave me his books translated in English to read, and I was back there within a couple of days, and I brought my bags with me after I read the second message of Islam in translation. I mean, that was just too much. The simplicity, the clarity, and the comprehensiveness of this ideology in a little pamphlet was just startling. And so I was, again, now impressed intellectually, as intellectual as you can be at 24, and emotionally with the movement. By the time I'm leaving his room, the saloon, it's time now for the brothers and sisters to return from book distribution. You saw them in some of the film that we would go out after our sunset prayer and distribute books on campuses and in the streets all over the Tri-Cities of Khartoum, Omdurman, Khartoum North. And then we would come back and we would report to Ustaz. We would be sitting in a room like this, and it was a very democratic process, and people who had something to say would speak, and everybody would listen, and if you had something to add and so forth. And it was a very powerful education in the Socratic method of critical thinking, is what he was taking us through. It was very... Well, when I left, and this was actually on the first day, when I left, the Hamla bus arrived, and first I could only hear it. And you heard them chanting Allah here. And so I'm walking outside the house, and it's very still. It's on a sort of quiet street at the end of the street. There's not a lot of noise. And I'm hearing something that sounds like singing. And as it gets closer and closer, I'm starting to make out something, and I can't really hear what it is, but my ear really is drawn to it. And then as I look up, this bus is coming, and all I see is white light coming out of the bus. And that's because all of the Republicans, like the sisters here, were wearing their white tobes, and the men, most of them, many of them, if not most of them, are wearing their jalabiyah and white imma. So there's all this light coming out of the bus, and then I realized that they're saying Allah. And I asked Salman, are these his students? you know, these are students. And he said, yeah. I said, well, yeah, I was sold, even at another level right there. So I never did decide to go any further than Sudan once I got there. I started to say my intention was to go there, investigate that question I had, and then go study Arabic in Saudi Arabia. Until this day, I haven't set foot in Saudi Arabia. And
Next year for
I won't continue my next thought. I'll keep that one to myself. But my experience there caused me to stay there for 9 years. That wasn't my intention, of course, when I went. But it's like, you know, it says in the Bible that I think it's something to the effect of, you know, religion is like somebody can correct this, a treasure in a field, and then you go and sell all your belongings and buy that field. That's kind of how I felt about where I was. I mean, there was no reason to go anywhere once I was there. You know, the problem became, at that time, trying to live up to the standard that was being taught us and that was being exemplified by Ustaz Mahmoud. That was a task. And we all did the best we could at that. I can't really add a lot to what's been said about his character. The concept of transformation, though, I think is one just should pause on a moment. I can say personally that my own mother said I was a different person when I returned. Of course, I was 9 years older, but she meant that I had changed or transformed into someone who's different, and I hope to think better. And a large part of that is I was living in a community that was modeling its behavior on a teacher who was exemplary, and also who was directing us to imitate the Holy Prophet Muhammad, who was exemplary. And so we were in the best of all possible worlds with the best of all possible guides. And Ustaz Mahmoud's courage you saw. I mean, his sincerity you saw. The way he spoke, and I was in that first trial, the way he spoke to the judge, rocking calmly, and just telling him what he thought about that court, and that he wasn't going to participate in the court, was indicative of who he was. He would do no less. And he knew the verdict of the court before they knew what they were going to do. He told us, I mean, I'll share this with you, Ustaz Mahmoud and over 50 of the Republican brothers were incarcerated for 22 months, and the sisters for 9 months? For 9 months. Ustaz Mahmoud got out like on the 18th of December, and at that meeting he had with us that night, he planned the book that was released to get him rearrested and ultimately used as a pretext to execute him. He planned it the night he got out of jail. And the brothers that were incarcerated with him were asked, would you like, you've been, away from your families for almost 2 years, would you like to go home and see them and come back and we start working on the book in a week? Or would you like to start now? And to the person, they said now. Let's start, let's write the pamphlet, we'll work on it. And Ustaz said, no, why don't you go home to your families? They haven't seen you. So they did, and by the time they returned, he had someone else working on the book, and the book was ready by Christmas, the 25th of December. And it was released that day. And we don't have to focus on the they're not worth words, the people who executed it, really. They have their own issues to deal with. I wouldn't want to be them, I'll tell you that. But at present, I'm teaching at a college just north of Seattle, and I teach multicultural studies. And what I try to do in my classes is exemplified to my students, to the best of my ability, some of the qualities I learned from my father.
One more opportunity to listen to some Inshad from Ustaz Mahasan and Ustaz Karoma.
بكر بشير وين؟
لم يثنه عنكم بلد ولا أهل يتعانق النيلا
اللؤلؤ المكنون
ومرائد المرجان
مواكبكم
تتيقظ الديان
المهرجان متى
المهرجان لا
المهرجان متى
يأتي هنا والآن
المهرجان متى
يأتي هنا والآن
المهرجان متى
يأتي هنا والآن
يأتي هنا
يأتي هنا والآن
الآن
يأتي هنا والآن
الآن
يأتي هنا والآن يأتي هنا والآن الآن يأتي هنا والآن الآن يأتي هنا
هبت سحرا فينا أنفاس ربان
نجدي
فالمهجة قد ذابت بالشوق وبالوجد
هب السحر فينا أنفاس ربان المهجة والزابت بالشوق وبالوجد
يا طلعت مناوى
في أشرف أوقاتي
والوجه له نور
قد أشرق في ذاتي
يا طلعت مناوى
في أشرف أوقاتي
الوجه له نور
قد أشرق في ذاتي
حتى ظهر المخفي للعز وللمجد
هب السحر فينا أنفاس ربان المهجة والذابت بالشوق وبالوجد
هذا العالم المفرح والمجلس يحوينا
خذ كاسك ودنا
المجلس يحوينا
خذ كاسك ودنا
لا شيء هنا يبقى من والد أو جدي
هب السحر فينا أنفاس ربان نجدي فالمهجة والزابت بالشوق وبالوجد
صلى بسلام الله
أبدا يا ربي
للفرد نبي الله
والآل مع الصحب
للفرد نبي الله
والآل مع الصحب ما
أنشد عبد غني ما أنشد عبد غني للعز وللمجد
هب السحر فينا أنفاس ربان فالمهجة والذابت بالشوق وبالوجد
عندي خبر يروى
عن الساقي
خبر يروى
عني وعن الساقي
الصدق له نالا الصدق له نالا المولى عدم
لا شيء هنا يجدي
غير المولى عدم
لا شيء هنا
غير المولى عدم
لا شيء هنا
لا هنا يجدي غير المولى عدمنا لا شيء هنا يجدي غير المولى عدم لا شيء هنا يجدي غير المولى عدم لا شيء هنا يجدي الله
So many aspects of this movement are terribly moving, including the music and the inshad and the zikr. Zikr meaning remembrance of God that gets tagged on to the end of many of these gasaid or hymns. And they're immensely powerful, and people on occasion could even pass out in the process of being moved by the deep spirituality of the words and the rhythm. And, so this was an amazing opportunity for live performance of inshad, probably a unique occurrence in the United States. And that certainly is a fundamental part of this program and of this conference that we'll have tomorrow. We're trying to focus on progressive ideas in Islam, notions that don't get much attention at all, and particularly in American media and the Western media, our focus is on very much difficult, non-peaceful elements of Islam, the conflicts that have emerged all over the Muslim world. So we're trying to highlight the fact that Islam is highly differentiated and that there are peaceful, progressive elements in this vast faith known as Islam. We're so grateful for the participation of our Athens community, our African Studies faculty and staff, our African Students Union, and all the other students from Ohio University who've been here for this evening, and also very grateful to people who've come from so very far away, from Europe, from Africa, from the Middle East, for this program. And thank you all for your participation, for our wonderful technological aspects of the evening. Tomorrow our program starts at noon with a keynote address by Cornel West. Thank you all so very much for coming this evening.